everyone and welcome back to Mariana Mas Books. My name is Mariana and today I am here to do the mid-year book freakout tag, my favorite tag on BookTube. If you don't know, this tag is the whole reason why I opened my channel. My first video ever was a mid-year book freakout tag, and I'm especially excited to answer the questions this year because I have been having the best reading year in ages since I started BookTube, but also since a long time. So I feel very passionately about all the books I'm going to talk about today. I'm very excited, so I won't spend the time doing the intro. Let's just go to the questions. The first question is, what is the best book you have read so far in 2023? And I don't even have to think about it. It is The Lions of Alrazan by Guy Gabriel Kay, which, unless another Guy Gabriel Kay book beats this one, this will be my favorite book of 2023. I am calling it now. It's one of those books that combines so many elements that you like in every sense. So Guy Gabriel Kay writes what I would call historical fantasy, but I have heard that he himself calls his books historical fiction with a quarter turn to the fantastic, which I think is a fantastic way to describe them because they are truly genre benders. At least this book is. I follow a lot of channels that talk about fantasy booktube. And I follow a lot of channels that talk about historical fiction and also history. And I have heard a lot of the fantasy people say, oh, this isn't really fantasy, this is historical fiction. But if I were to give this book to the historical fiction people, they would say, this isn't historical fiction, this is fantasy. And I think that is why it hit the mark specifically for me. Because as fantasy, it's extremely low fantasy. And I have realized that I really like low fantasy books where you have a story that happens to be set in a magical world, rather than a story that is a side dish to the magical world. I like the focus on the story that happens to be set in a magical world. On top of that, you have this being an actually historical book in the sense that you can feel, you read, and you know the amount of research that Guy Gabriel Kay did to write this book. The Lions of Alrazan is inspired by medieval Spain, specifically around the time of what is called the Reconquest. You have the conflict of three religions that are not called Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but those are the three religions. You have a holy war. You have questions of loyalty, of who am I loyal to, who are the good guys and the bad guys. There are no good guys, there are no bad guys. Every single side is heroic and every single side is awful. Guy Gabriel Kay gets it. He gets history, he is well researched. And you know how you have medieval fantasy, and I'm a fan of medieval fantasy, but from now on I'm going to say medieval fantasy in air quotes because the only thing medieval about medieval fantasy is that you have a castle and a king and a queen and lords and ladies and knights throwing some swords and call it medieval fantasy. I'm not criticizing, I love that brand of fantasy, but this is actual medieval fantasy. Actual medieval fantasy with actual research. This is actually set in a medieval-like world, in a medieval-like time period that feels realistic to history, but that you don't have to know history to enjoy. I won't talk more about the book because I can spend hours. I do want to make a video dedicated specifically to this book. I haven't made it because I'm intimidated, because I have never made a single book video before, but it's coming. I promise it's coming. Sometime in the future, it's coming. Question number 2. What is the best sequel you've read so far in 2023? And the best sequel I've read so far is, without a doubt, Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, which is book 3 in the Life Ship Traders trilogy, which is the second trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings as a whole. I'm not going to talk much about it because it's a 6th book as a whole in a series and a 3rd book in a trilogy. For now, the only thing I'm going to say is that this book is perfection. I think it's literally a perfect book in my opinion. It has great characters, the perfect pace where it's slow enough but fast enough, and the perfect amount of action. There is not too much where you become bored by the action, and it has the magic in it is so imaginative, and the way Robin Hobb uses fantasy to explore very human themes of trauma and that type of thing is just perfect, honestly perfect. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you wanted to read but you haven't read yet, a new release from this year? And that would be What the Hex by Jessica Clare, which is book 2 in this series, which is about paranormal, witchy, cute, funny rom-coms, and it's the perfect brand of paranormal rom-com that I love. Witches, warlocks, funny cats, the type of humor. I love her type of humor. There's really not much to explain about it. What the Hex came out in April, but because it's witchy and I am saving it for October. So What the Hex by Jessica Clare. Question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm not necessarily anticipating it because it's my favorite series ever. It's not, but I'm body reading this series with my cousin. It's a middle grade series, the Nevermore series, and book 4, Silverborn, is supposed to come out in October of this year. It was supposed to come out last year, but it got pushed, so hopefully it won't get pushed again and it will come out this year so I can finally read it with my cousin, because she is growing older. When we started this body read, she was a middle grader and she's not anymore. So I'm getting nervous that she's going to grow too old and too cool for this series before we finish it. So hurry up and publish book 4 already. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment, and I am dreading this question because the book I'm going to talk about is a book that is loved by booktubers that I respect and whose opinions I value and whose opinions I usually agree with. They are booktubers where when they recommend a book, I pay attention, and also booktubers that I consider booktube friends. And I feel awful, but I'm just going to say it. It's Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I gave it 2 stars. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say 3 things, and then I'm going to refer to you to a Goodreads review by Kassen at Always Doing, because she wrote an excellent review and I agree with everything she says. So I'm just going to link her review and I'll just say 3 things. One is that this isn't as and this is not what bothered me about this book, okay? This is just an explanation. This is not a sci-fi book. This is a literary fiction with sci-fi elements, and I love fiction with speculative elements. I don't need a book to be straight up sci-fi or straight up fantasy. I have read either historical fiction or literary fiction books that have a speculative element and love them. But in this particular case, I feel like the sci-fi elements didn't quite live up to the praise the book is receiving. The second thing is that this feels like Emily St. John Mandel needed to process some feelings about the pandemic, and she did it through this book, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with. I just feel like I could feel Emily St. John Mandel's voice instead of her characters. And that's where you lose me, where I can read the author speaking instead of the characters speaking. Okay, I am so sorry about the lighting, but I am editing this video and there is something more I want to say. Just because it's something that honestly confuses me, because I have never heard anyone talk about this when they review this book. And I am genuinely confused. So there is a very blatant self-insert character in this novel. There is an author who is a female author who is very famous because she has written a book about a pandemic. And for context, in the world where this is set, it's different timelines, but in the timeline where this author appears, there has already been a pandemic in the world. And this author wrote a book about a pandemic years before that pandemic happened. And so she's very famous because she wrote a book about a pandemic before a pandemic happened. Which it can't get any clearer that it's a self-insert. She even says that her next project will be a book with sci-fi elements, which again is very clearly Emily St. John Mandel. And that just really bothered me, because I think that maybe you can do a self-insert in like a really smart meta way, but this just, again, it contributed to me feeling like I was reading the author instead of the characters. And every time this character spoke, I just assumed it was Emily St. John Mandel speaking. And I did want to mention this in the video because, again, I have never seen anyone talk about this. And this was one of the most jarring things for me when I read the book. And I'm just really surprised that no one mentions it, and I don't know why. So again, now I'm going to refer to you to Cassian's review because I agree with everything she says. Keep going with the video. Question number 6 is biggest surprise, and the biggest surprise has been the poem of the Cid, or the Mio Cid, and this is a 12th century epic Spanish poem, which is a surprise because this poem is a very popular poem for high school curriculums, so it's a very popular school read. If you Google this poem and editions in Spanish, most of what you will find are editions geared towards students, and especially high school students. And I remember vividly sitting in class, being bored to tears, listening to my teacher reading aloud the Mio Cid. And so I swore I would never read it because, again, I just remembered being bored to tears. And then you can watch a video I did for this poem where I explain why I decided to read it. But basically, to sum up, it's because I wanted to read it for Ancient Sathon, and also because the main character in the poem of the Mio Cid is a historical figure from the medieval Spain, who is also a mythical figure, who is known as the Cid, and his name was Rodrigo Díaz de Vivar, and one of the characters in The Lions of Alrazán is based on Rodrigo, is based on the Cid. His name is also Rodrigo, and if you've read that book, you know who Rodrigo is. This Rodrigo is based on the knight who features in this poem. I'm loving this poem, which is no surprise because I have realized that I love medieval literature, but it's a surprise because I swore I would never read it because, again, I was so bored. Turns out it's great. So thank you, teacher, and I'm sorry, teacher. You were right. This is epic, and I'm sorry I didn't understand it when I was a teenager. Question number 7 is favorite new author, either debut or new to you, and my favorite new author is none other than Guy Gabriel Kay. Where to begin? There are authors that you love because you love their stories. You love the way they write books, characters, plot, what have you. There are authors who are favorite because you love them as authors. You love their lives, you admire them, you have read their biographies or watched interviews with them, and you love them and their writing philosophy, and so that's why they're favorites. And then there are also favorites who you love because intellectually, when you read them, you fall in love with the author's mind, basically. And for instance, Tolkien, who is my favorite author of all time, he fulfills the three. I love his stories, I love his books, I love the way he writes, and I have read his biography, personally, as an author, as a person. I respect him, I admire him, I like him. And then thirdly, his mind blows me away. Intellectually, it's like, yes. Guy Gabriel Kay is an author who I love the way he writes. I love his books, I love his stories, but then also intellectually, like I read his books. I'm currently reading his poetry collection, and I'm currently reading another novel by him, and I read them and I fall in love with his mind. In terms of his writing, to say something concrete, his prose is amazing, and you will not find any review where you will not hear about his prose. He's amazing. If I were to recommend like a literary fantasy or a fantasy that feels literary, Guy Gabriel Kay, look no further. He's also excellent at characters. He will give you 3 paragraphs and you know who this person is. He has an excellent sense of humor. I laugh out loud at his books, and he's so romantic. Like, he's honestly my favorite new romance author. Even though you could read his books and not focus on the romance if you don't like romance, and there is a lot to like other than the romance, but I love romance. So and reading his books and reading his poetry and watching his interviews, and I just, please read Guy Gabriel Kay. Like, if you take anything away from this video, choose one of his books that sounds like it will appeal to you, or his poetry, and just go read him. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. And this is one of my favorite questions, and I hate the snob people who say, I'm not a 13-year-old girl who is a fictional crush. Please don't be one of those people. My favorite fictional crush, for the first time this year, I'm going to answer a couple. They are both my crush. He is my crush, she is my crush, and them as a couple, they are my crush. I ship them, I love them, and I also crush on them. And they are Rodrigo Belmonte and Miranda Belmonte from The Lions of Alrazan, who you can tell are married because of their last names. Rodrigo, as I said, is based on the real life Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, who more in the mythical figure than the historical figure. He is the embodiment of medieval chivalric culture. He's loyal, he's moral, he's a leader, he inspires his men, he loves his wife, he loves his kids. He is embodiment of medieval chivalric chivalrous knight. And she is honestly currently my favorite fictional female book character, without a doubt. She is fierce. She's more fierce than any of the men in that book, but not in like a I'm not like other women type of way. No. She is the perfect strong female character. Just perfection, chef's kiss. She's my crush. I wanna marry her. I wanna marry him. I wanna marry them. Actually, I don't, because I love them together. I just want to worship them while they remain married. So they are my newest fictional crush, and I will give one honorable mention, just because I feel like most of the time when I answer fictional crushes, they are idealistic, imaginative crushes, where the people I crush on are way out of my league. Like Rodrigo and Miranda Belmonte, they are both way out of my league. Like way out of my league. Okay? I'm happy to just worship at their feet, but I crush on them. They are attractive. But I have one character who I think, if I were to be a character in that world, or if I were to go live in that world, I could actually be the wife of this character. Realistically, I think we could get along more than I could get along with Rodrigo and Miranda. Like, they are both super brave, super fierce. If I were to meet them in real life, they would not like me, because I'm the least adventurous person in the world. Like, the first time Rodrigo went into one of his adventures, I'd be like, where are you going? Please be safe. No, it's scary. And he would dump me. But this other character, I feel like we would be compatible. And that is Lord Cass from The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold. I love Lord Cass. I finished the book yesterday and I miss him already. He is a sweetheart. He is, again, loyal, but in a more realistic way than Rodrigo Belmonte. And he's kind. And yeah, so Lord Cass is my honorable mention. Then the next question is, who is your newest favorite character? And that is easy to answer and a short answer, because I have a whole 40-minute video dedicated to him that you can go watch. And there is a live ship Paragon from the Live Ship Traders trilogy from Robin Hobb. You can go watch my 40-minute video about Paragon if you are interested in him. The next question is a book that made you cry, and usually when I answer this tag, I say that I don't cry in books, but that if I were to cry, and then I say which book would make me cry. Well, this is a year where I had my first ugly cry, sob, bawl, actual sobbing with a book, first year ever, and that is A Rover's Story by Jasmine Warga, which is a middle grade book about a Mars rover and his drone friend and their mission to Mars. So it spans through years and years, because it's rooted in some science about rovers and missions and that type of thing from NASA. But this is the first book where I actually sobbed. I was folding laundry, listening to the last hour or so of the audiobook. I was just folding laundry, listening to the book, minding my own business, and then just the last half hour of the book, I stopped with the laundry, I sat down on my bed, just listening to the book, straight up bawling and sobbing for half an hour, for the last half an hour of the book, and then for the rest of the day. When my mom came home, I told her about the book, I told her how it ended, I got choked up, oh my god. And the reason why is because there's a theme I wasn't expecting in this book, which is an exploration about death and mortality, and how you live your life to the fullest when you know that your life won't be forever, when you know that your life ends, and how you deal with that. And that got me hard. So yeah, a Rover story by Jasmine Warga. And then the next question is a book that made you happy, and I'm going to say the Tonyman trilogy by Robin Hobb, which also has a book that made me cry and moments that made me really emotional, but in general it just made me happy because it made me happy to be back with those characters. The way that the series of the Realm of the Elderlings is written, is structured, means that you have a main character with which you start, and then you don't see him in all of the trilogies. And so the Tonyman trilogy is the third trilogy, and it's like the return to that character and to those characters and to that part of the world in the series. And so just being back with the characters and seeing the relationships and then seeing the new characters and the relationships between them made me incredibly happy. And yeah, the Tonyman trilogy by Robin Hobb. The next question is, what is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year? And the most beautiful book I've bought this year is definitely the illustrated hardcover edition of Assassin's Apprentice. It's a gorgeous edition, and I'm so happy to have it on my shelf. And then finally, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I'm going to say, firstly, I have my project of reading one guy Gabriel K book a month until I'm done with his books. I'm also body reading The Realm of the Elderlings with Elle from Elle Thinks, and we are trying to finish it by the end of the year. Those are my two main reading projects, and then other stuff, of course, Historathon. So I have books for Historathon, and then I want to participate in Victober, so I want to read David Copperfield for that, and I want to participate in Non-Fiction November. And then two series that I want to read, or at least the first book of those series that I want to read before the end of the year, are the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden and the Limon Chronicles by Dorothy Donnet. So that was my mid-year book freakout tag. I'm going to leave it at that because I swear I tried to make it short. I have family stuff to do today, and I am already half an hour late for them. So I'm leaving, I'm going. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you soon with another bookish video, and in the meantime, I wish you happy reading.